Hello, everybody. Welcome along. Another edition of the Cricket Badger podcast, and great pleasure to welcome Alan Butcher to the Cricket Badger podcast. Alan, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you, James. Yes, I'm very well. Thank you. Yeah, all good.
Well, you've taken on the task of answering the Cricket Badger 20 questions, and you've opted not to see them first. So the questions are a surprise to you. Your son has done these before, Mark, and
Right.
we'll see how your answers compare to his as we go through.
Okay.
But the first one's a nice, easy one.
Can I ask you though? Did he ask to see them, or did he go blind as well?
Do you know what? I can't remember. I think he might have gone blind as well. I think he might have just gone for it.
Yeah,
I think there's a Butcher laid back kind of attitude to the questions, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first question.
Stupidity, it's cool.
Why cricket? You spent all of your life in cricket in various guises. What is it about cricket that turned you on, made you love it, and has kept you in the sport?
I think in the first instance, it would have been parents, obviously, and especially my mother, who she loved cricket and desperately wanted to see her son, or one of her sons, playing an Ashes series. Well, she didn't get that, but she got a grandson, so it kind of worked out all right. And in fact, probably turned out better for being the grandson, because she by then was retired and had more time to go and watch. So it was probably better for her. My dad was a good amateur footballer, and he actually was offered terms with Leighton Orient back in the day, but that was before Jimmy Hill got involved in the minimum wage negotiations, and I think he was offered £4 a week, which he couldn't afford to take up. But I've got my mum left us a scrapbook with letters and articles about how good a footballer he was. So there was always sport. I went to Australia when I was 10, and obviously cricket, massive part of my upbringing then. I played football and other sports, mainly football. Played for South Australia, had trials with Chelsea when I played for Surrey schools. So I was a reasonable footballer, but I just loved cricket, wanted to play cricket. My path was set.
It's a family affair as well, isn't it? Your brothers, Ian's been on the podcast as well. Martin, your two brothers both played cricket for Surrey. And obviously, Mark, as you said, goes on and plays for England. But Gary, a very successful career with Surrey. And Bryony as well, your daughter played too, didn't she?
Yes, she played for Essex ladies and Devon ladies, and captained the Exeter uni team. And so they're grown up with it. I've been asked about Mark before, about whether I did a lot of coaching with him when he was young, and I'd say no, I didn't, because I didn't have time. But cricket with him and his brother, I think it was a case of osmosis. It just was part of their growing up, part of their childhood. It can turn some kids off, but it didn't theirs. So
I interviewed you and Mark for my book about fathers and sons in cricket, and one of the things I found talking to obviously you, but I spoke to the Ealhams, the Cowdreys, all sorts of different people as we went through that book, and made a number of kind of conclusions at the end of it, that as you say, you're brought up with the game on your doorstep from the very early age. You got cricket bats and things lying around and what have you. You because somebody in your family has been there and done it, it's more achievable. Doesn't seem as if it's that far away. And you are kind of going to games as a youngster. You're doing those 10,000 hours in terms of kind of practice from a very early age without even realising it. So there's all sorts of things that go into that.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important, and I think that's one of the problems with the sort of the development and the, what shall I say, the elitism tag for cricket. Is it? No, I don't think, my personal view is that I don't think it's entirely cricket's problem. if there is very little cricket played in state schools and people don't have access to a brother, father, uncle who have played, it's very difficult for them to get interested and involved in the game. So I think that's a huge problem that needs addressing. And to be fair, for many years, counties and MCC and the ECB, they've tried to get into schools and run programs and to instill interest in the game and see if anyone's interested. I'm not saying that more couldn't have been done, and there is more still to do. That's obvious from the ACE program and the SACA programs that have been unearthing players. So, but again, county cricket only has the county clubs only have a finite amount of money to spend, and it can't always spread their net as wide as they would hope.
We're going a bit away from the 20 questions here, but I often think I do a bit of tennis commentary as well, and I often think how many Wimbledon champions are walking past me in the street that have never picked up a tennis racket. How many Ashes heroes have never held a cricket bat? Who don't know if they'd only given it a go or had the opportunity, they would have been really good at it.
Yeah, I guess I went to state schools. I didn't have a private education, but it didn't ever seem to be. Thank you. I've got my coffee now because the domestic problem was the coffee machine breaking down as well. So, I don't know why. I had a small opportunity to play when I was at primary school in England before I went to Australia, but I'd already got a love from the game from my parents, I suppose. So, and I learnt to play cricket by watching the test matches on TV, and then going out and copying what I'd seen in the evening. So I didn't have much formal coaching, or I didn't have too much going on at school. But I had someone who was pushing an interest in it.
Yeah, my love for the game started by initially watching it on television, then playing it, and then going along and watching people like yourself play. And you need to have that opportunity, that chance. I mean, terrestrial television, I think, is a massive thing. But that's maybe another day. If not a cricketer, what would you have done with your life? I mean, would it have been football or would it have been another sport?
I guess I always said that I would all very steady careers. I was either going to be, it was either sport, cricket or football, or an actor or a writer. That was when I was about 10 years old. They were my three go-to options. So I managed one of those. I did act in one school play, and I have written one book. So I've done a bit of both, but obviously played and coached quite a lot of cricket. So that wasn't
any bad. Music in your bones, like Mark?
Only the love of it, and So as a child of the 60s, it was there was a huge explosion of different kinds of music during that period of time, which got us away from the Frank Sinatras, who I now love, and Al Martinos and people of that sort, the crooners and stuff that I would listen to, that my mum would be listening to. So the usual sort of teenage rebellion, although I don't know, I think that's a bit blurred these days, because if you go to festivals, there's a huge range of, a few age ranges now, people listening to the same kinds of music. But no, so I did I had guitar lessons, but that was sort of more classical Spanish, and I was more keen on learning the Kinks riff to "You Really Got Me" or something like that, as well. And I got bored with it quite quickly.
Who was the biggest influence on your cricket career? You've obviously mentioned your parents and what have you, but is there an early coach or somebody that inspired you or something that...
I wouldn't necessarily say, no. I would think the biggest influence on my career, being a left-handed batsman and a left-handed bowler, was Gary Sobers.
Yeah.
I'm watching Gary Sobers.
And he's not a bad person to take
He
tips
was
off.
A decent role model. Unfortunately, I didn't quite aspire to his heights, but not many have. But then there was a guy in Adelaide who used to run a program called the Junior Colts, which was run by the South Australian Cricket Association, and they were a bit like the MCC Young Pros, except we weren't pros. But he used to pick players from all the young players from the local grade clubs and have them up at the Adelaide Oval. We used to have home ground was the Adelaide number 2 ground, which is a place I always make a pilgrimage to if I go to a test match at the Adelaide Oval, because the sights and the smells of the eucalyptus trees around the ground always bring back those memories of when I was 12, 13. And he was a very sort of tough, hard taskmaster and very, very good on technique and at that stage, at sort of 13 years old, I was playing against blokes who used to play Aussie rules football in the winters. So these are big tough guys, and some of them quite quick. So you're netting against them regularly. So you grow up quickly. So that was a really good formative experience, and I enjoyed that. That development area was was really pivotal, I think, in my career.
What was the best moment or day of your cricketing experience? If I could take you back to any one day in your life and you could relive it again to get that joy back, which one would it be?
That's always watching Mark at 173 against Australia at Headingley.
Yeah. So not your day, but Mark's day. Yeah.
No, yeah, that day. Yeah. Without a doubt. That was, I don't have to think about that. That's like, yeah.
It was some knock he played, wasn't it? And I remember you telling me that he'd been struggling a little bit, and he picked up the phone to you, didn't he? And he said, "Dad, can you spare a few hours? I need a bit of guidance here." And I think you replied to him, "I've been waiting for you to ask me."
Well, yeah, it's a bit like that. Because I've been on a few tours. When he first started, I was hosting, tour parties for travel company, and I could see that he could play, but I could see that he was struggling, and I could see the areas that I thought he needed to improve on. But I didn't think, it wasn't my place at that time to interfere while he had his England coaches and whatever, and even at Surrey it wasn't that easy because he was in and out, and I found it hard. And also fathers and sons can, sometimes it's not always easy to offer and accept advice. There are those sort of clashes and I think we, not only fathers and sons, but until you're ready to accept advice, advice can be unwelcome.
Yeah.
And so that when he came to me, I think his words were, "Treat me like I'm a 12-year-old and know nothing," or something. And so I got kind of his permission to to do what I thought that he needed to do. And so
you kind of stripped him right back and started again almost.
Basically, yeah. I mean, no, it wasn't quite as drastic as that, but there were some fundamental things that I thought he needed to get right. Things such as the timing of his trigger movements and that. And once he nailed that made things a lot simpler. And also enabling him to have options to score safely against spin, and also to just defend safely against spin. Because up until that time, I'd seen him try and take the likes of Shane Warne on, to try and hit him out of the attack. And I said, mate, if you hit him for 3-4s in the first 2 or 3 overs, that's not going to frighten him. It's like, but you're going to need a lot of luck to get to 100. But if you're confident in being able to stay at the crease and defend, then it becomes a lot easier to attack when you get the opportunity. And also areas to just milk the ball and get singles, get up the other end, and that kind of thing. So it was those types of things, and he responded really well, and it was great fun.
Were you at Headingley when he scored his 173?
I wasn't. No, unfortunately, I wasn't. I was watching on my sofa, and it
must have felt amazing though, because it's obviously your boy. And he's doing something tremendous, but also you've played your little bit of a part in that as well in helping him on his way. So
it was an exciting thing, quite emotional. I wasn't emotional about it then. I probably get more emotional talking about it now than I did then. I was just really happy. But the disappointing thing was I was buzzing with it, and I wanted to go out and talk to people. So I went down to my local pub, and not one person there had actually been watching it or seen what was going on. So I thought, I had a pint and I came back home, and so there wasn't much point. But brought me back down to earth. So
on the flip side,
a good day, great day.
On the flip side, Alan, we've done the good day, a bad day, a day that you really wouldn't want to go back to. What sticks in your mind there as to be I mean, cricketers have many bad days, I know, but which one would stand out?
Yeah, you try to forget most of them. What was the worst day? The worst day. I'm just trying to. I think possibly one of the worst days, and one that upset me the most, was not being selected for the West Indies tour 1980, I think. Was it 80? I think it was 1980. I'd played the test match in 79, and I hadn't expected to go on the Australian tour, because I think it was fairly clear they'd earmarked Wayne Larkins, but he got injured, so I replaced him in the test side. So I'd had to have done something fairly spectacular, which I didn't. And so I didn't go on that. But the following year, I got something like 1,700 runs. I'd had Mike Brearley was quoted as saying I was one of the top 3 players of quick bowling in the country, and to then not being selected for that was very disappointing. And I don't know. Unfortunately, after that, I probably didn't perform, and I'm not blaming that for it. It was just I just had a couple of seasons where I didn't get runs early season. I ended up with a decent season because I got lots of runs in August. I got injured a bit with a bad wrist, which affected me. So for the next 2-3 seasons, I didn't ever feel I was really in the frame, and it kind of went away. But I did feel that I probably should have been selected. And am I interrupting your? Because there's a subsequent story to that. whereby
Okay.
20 odd years later,
Go on, carry on.
I was in Adelaide following one of the test series with a group of journalists and talking about unlikely selections or strange selections. And like there was a Peter Taylor who got picked for Australia, but they picked the wrong Peter Taylor. And one of the journalists said to me, well, you know about that. And I said, what do you mean? Then? And he said, you know what happened in West Indies tour 1980. And I said, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, yeah, you know. And I said, no, you'll have to tell me. And he said, apparently Ted Dexter turned up to see the team off the day they left for the West Indies and picked out a black guy. And he said, who's that? And they said, that's Roland Butcher. Oh, no. They said, that's Butcher. And he said, well, that's not the Butcher I picked. And I said, don't be no, they assured me that was totally true. I mean, I've never been able to actually confirm it, but there were journos who were there. He said, no, this is what happened. Now, I've had the conversation with Roland Butcher since, and we've had a good laugh about it. But because 20 years on, there's nothing you can do. But whether that's true or not, but it's a good story.
Is it frustrating that you played one ODI and one Test, which isn't really a big sample size to prove your worth, is it? Is it frustrating you didn't get more of a go? Obviously, with central contracts and things these days, you might have had a bit more of a dabble.
Yeah, very, very. I mean, especially, you look nowadays at the amount of opportunities that people get, and rightly, I've got no problem with that. And I've always said I would like to have had maybe 5 or 6 games to, at least in my own head, work out whether in 5 or 6 you reckon you would have shown myself whether I was good enough, or I'd have been able to hold my hands up and say, look, no, I wasn't quite up to it. Yeah. But in one Test, it's very difficult to prove either way. So yeah, so it is a source of frustration, but I've got over it now. I'm not bitter.
Who was your cricket hero when young? I think you've answered this already with Sir Garfield, haven't you?
Yeah, and Ted Dexter.
Yes.
Gary Sobers and Ted Dexter were the two people that I most enjoyed watching.
Quite an interesting character, Ted Dexter, isn't he? I mean, I didn't. He was just a little bit before my time, but I heard Mike Atherton talking about him rocking up to a selection meeting or a first practice or something, and his biker leathers on his motorbike, and he stood for Parliament. He was a fairly stylish and flashy batter, wasn't he, as well? And quite a big personality.
And I think so. And I think it was. I didn't obviously know too much about his personality at that stage. Although even as a 9-10-year-old, if people are being called Lord Ted, or then you get a kind of idea that this is someone a bit different. And as I said, I'd not really at that stage not really had an exposure to private schools or the Oxford Cambridge crew. So he was just a bloke who played cricket as far as I was concerned then, and I just liked the way he played. He wanted to hit the ball. He played great shots. He took on the quick bowlers, and so it was he and Sir Garfield that were my two boyhood heroes. I obviously, again, I like watching Fred Truman, but he was probably, at the time I can remember watching, he was probably a bit past his best, because he got to his 300 wickets, but he probably wasn't at his absolute peak at that stage. But
he was past his best when I saw him, Alan. I saw him playing. He was past his best when I saw him, because he He was playing for Courage Old England 11 at Canterbury.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was quite stout by then, and kind of like rolled it off about 3 steps to bowl. So it wasn't quite the same Fred Truman that I'd heard about.
No, but again, that's it. He was a legend at the time. And, you look at people nowadays, and it's so hard to compare eras. But you think somebody with his kind of obvious ability and charisma would have made a lot of money in today's game, you'd have thought.
Absolutely.
Forever you and me, right by my side, where you ought to be. 'Cause if I ever were to lose you, I just don't know what I'd do. Let me hear you now.
Next question, Alan Butcher, is if you could trade lives with any cricketer, any current cricketer, jump into their body, jump into their skin, have their talents, have their lives for 24 hours, which cricketer would you pick?
Interesting. Do you know what? I think I'd probably go. Gone a little bit. It's gone a bit over. No. I'm going to go Virat Kohli and experience what it's like to be a god in a cricketing superstar in India, I reckon. I mean, it might be a real pain in the arse, but excuse my language. But
that's all right.
But to experience it, I think would be amazing. It's just sort of interesting, complete change of lifestyle. So yeah, Virat Kohli.
So that's different gravy entirely, isn't it? To being the best cricketer in England does not compare, does it?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. And I've got a little taste of it recently because my wife and I went travelling for 3 months in the new year till April, and we went to India, north and south, on the way out and on the way back. And I don't sort of spout the fact that I was a cricketer and blah blah, but then it did come up at some stage with one of our drivers and guides in a car, and the driver had been a little on the surly side up until then, but when he found out I was a cricketer and my son, whether he thought, but I mean, the usual thing is they think Mark is Mark Boucher. That's a sort of normal kind of thing. But once we'd explained that, and I mean, I'm absolutely certain that not many of them really knew who I was, but the mere fact that I played cricket suddenly meant the standard of our treatment went up several levels. And my wife said, "You are going to mention this to everybody we meet who needs to be doing us a favour," which I'm ashamed to admit I did.
Don't you know who I am?
Yeah, well, it was, yeah. But then you start to think that, I mean, one of the drivers actually came back the next day. Once he almost jumped out of his seat and looked behind him to see what he was looking at on a packed Delhi road, which was a bit disconcerting. But the next morning he came out and he said, "Sir, I put your picture on Facebook last night and I've got 175 new followers," he said. So he was delighted. But you can multiply that by millions for Virat Kohli. So I reckon I'd give that a whirl just to see how that was. And I reckon 24 hours would probably be enough, but we'll see.
I'm going to put you in charge of world cricket for a day, Alan Butch. Your name's on the door at ICCHQ or ECBHQ, wherever you want to camp out. What would be the first thing you would change with the game to make it better?
Oh, the first thing.
There's probably a list, isn't there? But
I think the only way I love Test cricket, and I whether it's necessary or not is not Test cricket. What I'm going to say is there's a lot of talk about the fact that maybe there needs to be two divisions of Test cricket and what have you. I can see why people will say that. I'm not sure that it's would be the best thing for the game. So what I think I would try and do was to bring about an agreement whereby there is a levelling up in the financial stakes of cricket worldwide. Because I think it would be such a shame for the game if many of the smaller nations decided that Test cricket for them wasn't worth the candle and just decided to go into white ball cricket. So, and if by bringing a bit of communism into the FCC and handing out money a little bit more, according to need, a little bit more to help these countries, because as much as anything, to stop all their best players going to franchise leagues and making them unavailable for their national teams, and that would probably be the first place I would go to. I doubt for one moment that I'd be successful in getting my wish for that. But
you're in charge, Alan. You can do what you like.
No, and it is communism as well, after all. So so I can do what I want. Yeah.
I mean, you've obviously
Trump of the ICC.
I don't think he'd want to be called a communist, would he? He's basically criticising them all the time.
No, but he does want to do what he wants to do. Yeah.
In terms of, you've obviously spent a long time coaching as well. But you also out in Zimbabwe, wasn't it? Did you feel like a have-not in terms of world cricket when you were with Zimbabwe, or?
Well, yes, because it was very difficult to. For example, 2011, we played our first Test match for 6 years after withdrawing from Test cricket before we got kicked out. That was obviously before I became coach. And so we came back and we won our first Test match back against Bangladesh, and we played really well. But then we didn't play another Test match for a year. And so we put in a hell of a lot of work to get to the stage where I was pretty confident that we would be much better prepared than Bangladesh to play that one-off test in Surrey. But it's hard to put that level of commitment and hard work in for a full 12 months before you play again. You need to play. And I think that. And the same thing happened. We went towards New Zealand. We played a test there, got absolutely hammered. And then it was a year until we went to the Caribbean and played more Test cricket. So it's very, very difficult to improve and just get people used to playing Test cricket, because it's different. It's hard, and you're playing in different conditions, and getting used to it over a period of time takes a long time. Well, it's taken Bangladesh a long time, and they're still, they're still kind of in the footholds of the top of the world game.
You'd hope with Bangladesh that win in Pakistan would just kind of boost Test cricket in that nation and keep them keen. But it's still happening what you just said, though, isn't it? You give Ireland test status, you give Afghanistan test status, but hardly ever play. Hardly seems to be any point in actually letting them be test nations if you're not going to actually allow them to play Test cricket.
I agree. Yeah, I guess the one thing going for the possibility of a two-divisional would be that they probably would then play more Test matches in amongst themselves. At least it would give you more opportunity, and perhaps there'd be a mechanism for the odd crossover test or something to people to do it. It's just that I think I can see that there's a lot of love for T20 cricket, and I understand it's necessary for the finances of the game and white ball cricket generally. But if that ends up being the only cricket we've got, then the cricket won't be as rich a game as it has hitherto been, and that will be a shame for future generations, I think.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. If you were starting your career again today as a youngster, Alan, and is there anything you would do differently with your game? And what advice would you, as of now, give the young you? And if you were the young you, would you be happy with where you got to? There's kind of a multifaceted question there, but from both ends of the spectrum, would you be happy as a youngster with knowing where you got to? What advice would you give yourself as a youngster if you could go back in time?
I would have. Cricket was a very social game back then, possibly too social. So I'd probably say, son, practice more and drink less. And that's an honest assessment. I can't say any more. Party less, practice more. The only thing I would say about that was that practice facilities now are so much better than they used to be. I mean, the nets at the Oval were never very good. Well, they used to be down the Vauxhall end, and they weren't great. So they weren't places that you would really hurry to, because they very often weren't great practice. And around most of the grounds, the situation was the same, and very often we just knock up on the outfields, and that's as much practice as you get. There weren't as many indoor schools, so you practiced while you were playing. So it was harder, but I would, if I'm just being totally honest, I'd say that would be what it would be. Practice more, party less.
The parties were fun, though, weren't they?
It was fun. Yes. I mean, very often it's like the old players sort of go to when you're talking about the comparison between the old days and now is people will always say, oh, I'm glad I played in my day because there were blah, 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 whatever. And yes, I have that, but increasingly I've started to think that I'm not so sure whether I personally now feel that, because I think, my bank balance would be a lot better than it ever has been. But not only that, from a cricketing point of view, as a young player, and you're coming into the T20, so as a youngster, you just want to play shots and be free to play shots. There are few exceptions to that, but the majority of youngsters just want to go out and smash the ball around. Yeah. You come into T20 and you get licensed to do that without any comeback. And so, that would be such a freeing thing to be able to experience. I posted on X the other day about the reverse, people getting out the reverse sweeps and stuff. And I said, well, I first played it in 1973. After I'd seen Mushtaq Mohammed, I think it was Mushtaq Mohammed, I saw him play it. So I gave it a try in a benefit game, because had I played it in a second team game or a first team game and got out, I would have been dropped. You wouldn't have played again. Probably dropped for the rest of the season for sheer stupidity. But that was how it was. But nowadays, people, the batsmen, they seem to have much more scope, freedom to express themselves, and if you're not frightened to try things, then you're much more likely to succeed while trying them.
Yeah.
And so the freedom to do so actually helps breed the success eventually if you practice it hard enough.
And would the 8-year-old Alan Butcher be happy with you sat there now and what you got out of cricket?
I'm 70. I've never had a proper job, so I can't say that he wouldn't maybe look and say it's been a complete disaster. But there have been frustrations along the way, of course, but in general,
yeah.
I probably wouldn't be. I hope that you feel I'm sitting here talking positively about things, because if I hadn't been reasonably happy with it, I'd probably be a miserable, bitter old git, and you wouldn't want to talk to me. So.
No, it's a pleasure to talk to you today. You're far from a miserable old git.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
They say all rock stars want to be sportsmen and vice versa. If you could have been famous doing something else, what would you have done?
I would have been Mick Jagger. No question. A lot of my former teammates and people all over the world will have seen me perform my Mick Jagger impersonation at some appropriate times and some inappropriate times. But that's definitely. And I did spend an afternoon with Mick during when I was coach at the Oval in my office when he tried to get in to watch a game quietly without too much fuss, and so he came up to my office and I sat chatting to him for a long time. He was great company, very entertaining, knowledgeable. I enjoyed his company, but unfortunately someone did get wind of it, and someone from the committee wished him away into the committee room for the rest of the afternoon. But that was I enjoyed that time that I spent with him. I didn't tell him or show him my impersonation. I kept that quiet.
Are you going to show us?
No. I've hung up the microphone.
Okay. If you could meet anybody, living or dead, who would you like to meet?
I would perhaps Nelson Mandela, I think. I'd like to sit down and have a chat with him about his trials, tribulations and triumphs and all the attendant issues of racism and apartheid, and not only in South Africa, but obviously worldwide, ongoing. And I think so.
He's an amazing man. I was lucky enough to go out to Robben Island once on a trip to South Africa and saw where he'd been held in prison and where he'd worked in the quarries and what have you.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
It's I mean, if anybody's there, I don't know if obviously the ex-inmates are going to all die off at some stage, but we used to get shown around by the former prisoners who had that insight into what it was like to be in there, and it's quite some trip. That it kind of stays with you. Some things stay with you quite a long time, and that stayed with me.
They do. I had a similar experience while I was travelling when we went to Cambodia to to the killing fields and actually met one of the survivors from the prison, Sol Teng, I think it's called. 93 years old, and well, he looked amazing for what he'd gone through from that period. Absolutely shocking. And so I think maybe Nelson Mandela.
Who would play you? They're going to make Butch the movie. Who plays you?
Well,
who plays you in the movie about your life?
Yeah, well, I've got when I wrote my book, The Good Marunga, and I had I was pretty certain that would be turned into a movie at some stage, and I got Leonardo DiCaprio cleared up to play me. So,
Yeah.
although I haven't heard back from him, so I don't know if he's free. But I can't really go away from that, I suppose. So, yeah, Leonardo would do.
I think he'd do a job, wouldn't he? He'd do a job.
I reckon.
What's the last time you can remember feeling really nervous? As a cricketer, were you a nervous person before you went into bat, or what's the last time you can remember feeling really kind of shaky about something?
Again, on our travels, we were in Sri Lanka. Just trying to think where this place was. It Ella? Anyway, we'd walked up a mountain, not a mountain, a hill, but I think it's called a mountain. Wasn't that high, and just below the top there was a zip wire, and the Ravana, I think it's called, 800 meters, pretty quick along there. And it's something I never ever do. I never think about those things if they don't really float my boat. But when we got to the place where you sign in, I just said to my wife, I'm going to do that. Absolutely certain, no doubt that that's what I was going to do that afternoon. So, sure enough, signed up, got up there, and I did it, and loved it. It was great. But in that instant before, while you're getting all strapped up, everything's on, and he's hooking you up and whatever, then, yes, I felt nervous and scared. Do I really want to do this? But it was too late to back out at that stage, so I threw myself off, and it turned out okay. But yes, I think that's probably the last time I actually felt as if, I don't like where I am at the moment. Yeah.
I think with those things, parachute jumps, bungee jumps and stuff like that, I've never done any of those, and I'm never going to, because you can't turn back. Once you've kind of launched yourself, there's no going back, is there? No going back. No going back. Yeah. I did toy with the idea of the bridge at Victoria Falls over the Zambezi bungee jump, but I didn't do it. But I'm very glad I didn't, because not so long after I left Zimbabwe, a woman, the rope snapped, and she she ended up at the bottom of the Vic Falls. She survived. Because I'm guessing that sort of, it's only going to snap at the full extent, so she probably didn't have that far to fall. Yeah. So I think she maybe broke a leg, but I think they got her out, and she didn't. Yeah, she didn't die. No. But you've not encouraged me to go against my vow to not do those things. And I've also, one of the other times feeling very nervous was actually watching my daughter jump off of do the gorge swing at Victoria Falls. And I think I don't know how old she was then, 16 maybe, and watching her get her gear on and then dive off was also quite nervous. My wife was 10 times worse than me. So. Things to do before you die. The top item on your bucket list. If I could give you one thing to do, what would you do? Oh, one thing. You know what? I don't know. I think probably to make sure that my wife and I go travelling around South America, having done the India's sort of South Asia is South American tour. So I think that would be at the moment, the top thing. Not something. Do you watch Race Across the World? Because the celebrity edition. Yes, they're going through South America at the moment, aren't they? Yes, they are. Yeah, we've seen other
the non-celebrity one. I think they've done a South African leg. Yeah, it's quite an interesting program.
Yeah, it's good. It is good. On a scale of 1 to 10, Alan Butcher, 10 is the Fonz, 1 is me. How cool are you?
10 is the Fonz.
Yeah. What is me? Where do you fit in the spectrum?
Oh, 7. Medium 7. Yeah. No idea. But 7 will do. 7 will do.
If you had access to a time machine, where and when would you take it? Where you can go forwards or backwards. I've just delivered it outside your house. Where would you take it?
Oh. These are so hard, I think.
That's why some people ask to see them first. You decided to go blind.
Yeah, I've got you. But sometimes things pop. But do you know what? I've always fancied myself as a bit of a Regency fox. So I think I might go back to, what's that? 17th century, 18th century, 18th probably. Yeah. I think I'd want to be someone who'd got a bit of money, especially going back in time to places where, the sanitation wasn't as good as it is now. You want to have a bit of money so that you have people to clear up after you.
I'd have been surprised if you'd opted to be a street urchin in that kind of situation.
No, I've already come from there. I didn't need to go back.
If you could have a second home anywhere in the world, where would you like to stick it?
Second home. Do you know what I think? I think south of France, probably.
Okay.
Somewhere close to a bottle of Cote de Rhone or something like that. Yeah, probably south of France.
Oh, that's a decent enough plan. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would you change?
Oh, I'd be 4 inches taller.
Stretch yourself a bit. We're on to...
That sounds a bit smug, doesn't it? It sounds like, he thinks he's all right, apart from being a bit short. But,
Well, you can only select one thing. The height. Yeah. We're on to question number 19. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today for the 20 questions on the Cricket Badger podcast, Alan Butcher. What will you be doing in 10 years' time?
10 years' time. Goodness me.
Still travelling?
I hope. I hope that I'm still well enough, fit enough to enjoy the things that I currently do. That I can still get up to London to go to the theatre, and various other things. That I can still enjoy a glass of wine. Still got friends and haven't fallen out with my family, so that we haven't got any beef there, which I can't see happening really. But I think probably just to be fit and well enough to travel, to, as I said, go to the theatre, do the things that I like to do. So maybe even still get a concert, but
why not?
I'm sure.
Yeah. Final question. If you had been interviewing yourself today and giving yourself these questions, what have I missed? What one thing could you have asked yourself to get a glorious and exclusive answer?
Oh, do you know what? Something came up halfway through, but now this is one that I probably should have had advanced knowledge of, because what would I have asked?
While you think about that one, Alan, I remember you telling me that when Mark made his debut, wasn't it? You were still playing for Glamorgan, weren't you? Did you playing the same match together?
Yes, I was captain of Glamorgan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So probably this is the question you should have asked me. Yeah. So we were at the Oval. It was in the old days of Championship match sandwiching a Sunday league, and I was having a problem with my knee, right knee, and I was playing the championship match, but I was going to sit out the Sunday League game. And then while we were having a beer in the tavern, Surrey Tavern, after the game, which is no longer there, Ian Gregg, who was then Surrey captain, slipped me the facts that Mark was going to make his debut. And my knee got a lot better, miraculously, and I decided I can't really miss this. And fortunately, we hadn't named a team, so I didn't have to deselect anybody, and so that turned out all right. And it went all right. I think I got 40, or we got 220 odd, I think, and Surrey were 120 odd for 5 when Mark came in, because he started his career pretty much the same as me, as an opening bowler who batted down the order. He came in, and I think Adam Hollyoake played really well. The 2 youngsters came in, played well, got them to within. Well, Mark had to hit the last ball for 6 to win the game, so they played really well. Which he failed to do. Now, a few years later, he was picked to play for the England. They went on a tour to Australia. It was his first tour. And the cricketer had asked me to do an article on him, write an article. So went interview, we had lunch and a couple of beers. And then I asked him about this day. And I said I was unlucky. What happened? He said, well, I had a plan. Because he knew what the bowler Steve Barwick, he was very good at getting the ball in the block hole. No great pace, but he got it in the block hole. He said I was going to take a step or two down the wicket and make him change his length. Then I was going to step back into my crease and get underneath it and hit it over long on, which is actually where I was stationed. So he's going to have to hit it over my head, which is why I wanted to be 4 inches taller, because he'd have to hit it higher. So when it came to it, though, Barwick ran in, he bowled the ball, and Mark didn't move, and it went in the block hole, and he just credited it to mid-wicket for 1. And they said, well, what happened? You didn't do that. What happened? And he said, well, you took so long to set the field, I forgot my bloody pot. Tough game, Sonny. But yeah, but a great occasion, obviously. And obviously involves Mark again, but it's I think we were the first father and son to play against each other. There have been others who played like in the same team, but I think we were the first father and son to play against each other between 2 first class teams. So.
As far as a day goes, that works out quite well, doesn't it? Because you get a few runs, your team wins, and your boy still does quite well. And
he does quite well, but yes, yeah, it was quite good. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, from this distance now, it would have been good if it had happened the other way around as well. But I couldn't have been I couldn't have shown that pleasure at that time. But no, it was a good day. A good day.
What's your final question? I promise you, and I'll let you get on with your day. We can both tune into the Test match at the Oval, which is up and running. Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's it like watching him on the telly? I mean, obviously you've got other children. We kind of centre on Mark because everybody knows Mark probably better than the others. But
it is. Yeah, I was a fairly relaxed watcher. Unlike, for example, John Crawley's dad, I remember, watching Test matches while he was there, and he was a bag of nerves, and he had a fag on, and another one he's hand ready to light as soon as that one went out. He was like, and it was like that all day. I mean, it was. Yeah, I was never like that. So it was, for me, it was what will be, will be. I mean, as I said, I was watching and seeing his struggle, but I could also, there was nothing I could do about it. So me getting upset or nervous was not going to help the situation. Just raised my blood pressure, so I didn't see the point in that. But
Brilliant.
I always enjoyed it. It was always good fun. And
Alan Butcher, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you answering the 20 questions on the Cricket Badger podcast today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining me.
A pleasure. Thanks.
And
All the
thank
best.
you. Thank you out there, everybody, for watching and listening later. There will be more Cricket Badger podcasts coming very soon. Thanks to manscaped.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. Quote Badger and get 20% off and get free shipping. Thanks to Alan again, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Cheers, James. Bye.